In anime, we're always obsessed with who's the strongest. Is it Naruto? Is it Hagoromo? Is it Luffy? Was it Gold D. Roger? But in some shows, the creators do us the unique privilege of telling us exactly who the strongest in history was. And Demon Slayer is one of those shows. You see, in Demon Slayer, there's a massive cast of incredibly strong characters. There's Guillaume, there's Muzan, there's Kokishibu. But of all of them, the unequivocally strongest character in the entirety of Demon Slayer is Yoriichi Tsujikuni. You see, Yoriichi is the creator of sun breathing. He's the twin brother of Kokishibu, and he's the man who defeated Muzan. But how did he get as strong as he was? Why didn't he stop Kokishibu from becoming a demon? And how did he encounter Muzan? We're gonna answer all those questions and more in a second, but guys, please, for me, before we get into anything else, like the video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. If you guys are new to my face, hi, I'm Nick. This is a brand new YouTube page of mine, and if you guys are coming over from NZHammer23, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate it. We're trying to get this page to 50,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and if we do it, I'm gonna get a tattoo anywhere on my body besides my face that says, I heart Sasuke. And for those of you who don't know Sasuke, well, he's my least favorite character in anime. So Yoriichi, the man capable of slicing 1,500 little bits of Muzan in the blink of an eye, the creator of sun breathing, the strongest breathing style user ever. He is truly the symbol of strength in the Demon Slayer universe. But how did he get there? In order to answer that question, let's start these videos off the way that we usually start these videos off, at the beginning. Yoriichi and his twin brother were born during the Sengoku period as twins. The Sengoku period was between 1467 and 1615 in Japan. For a little frame of reference, Demon Slayer's timeline takes place in the late 1800s, so anywhere between 200 to 400 years ago. However, during the Sengoku period, twins were considered a bad omen. It was widely believed that one twin would be good while the other was evil. And this was very unfortunate for Yoriichi, because Yoriichi was born with a birthmark on his forehead, while his brother Michikatsu was born a completely regular baby. Because of this, Yoriichi's father decided to kill Yoriichi. However, Akeno, and not that Akeno, Yoriichi's mother, flew into a rage and stopped him. Listening to the cries of his wife, it was decided that Yoriichi would simply be sent to live with the monks when he turned 10 years old. However, this birthmark wasn't just the birthmark. As you and me both know, this birthmark was a Demon Slayer mark. Now that's right, Yoriichi didn't have to awaken a Demon Slayer mark, he was simply born with one. Being born with a Demon Slayer mark granted Yoriichi a couple of things. One, it gave him the standard physical prowess boost, but two, it gave him constant access to transparent world, which essentially allows somebody to see bodies in X-ray. That is to say, the people with access to transparent world can see your veins, in your bones, in your muscles. However, because Yoriichi was considered the cursed child and was just going to be sent away at the age of 10, he was treated much poorer than Michikatsu. He was confined to a small room, he was given a poorer education, poorer food. And because he was treated with such malcontent, he didn't talk to anybody and therefore was thought to be deaf. Because of this, his mother made him Hanafuda earrings, hoping that the gods would bless his ears with the ability to hear. Now, the symbology of Hanafuda earrings is a bit complicated, because never in Japanese lore, even in the Sengoku period, were Hanafuda earrings attached to the gods. Hanafuda is actually just a card game. It was one of the first card games introduced to the Japanese by Western civilizations. So we actually don't know why Akeno, his mother, decided that Hanafuda earrings would give Yoriichi the ability to hear, other than the fact that they look cool. But speaking of Akeno, Yoriichi, whenever he wasn't confined to a small room, was seen clutching to her side. Michikatsu saw this as a sign of weakness and therefore took pity upon his brother. And while publicly he showed disdain towards his brother, he would often sneak into his room to sneak him better food. Michikatsu even went so far as to give Yoriichi a hand flute he made behind the back of his father. And technically the Hanafuda earrings worked, because when Yoriichi turned 7 years old, he smiled and said his first words. These first words came out of his mouth when he was watching his brother Michikatsu practice his swordsmanship. Upon seeing this, Yoriichi decided that he wanted to become a samurai and wanted to tell the whole room about it. And while by and large the people that were in the room with Yoriichi decided that this was never going to happen because he was going to go live with the monks when he was 10, one of the people that was training Michikatsu decided to give Yoriichi a literal swing at it. So he gave him a practice sword and taught him a simple stance, but the second he learned this simple stance, he flew at the man and struck him 4 times. Michikatsu was in awe of this, considering the fact that Michikatsu had been training under this man for years and had never once struck him once. However, Yoriichi, abhorring the feeling of hitting somebody, immediately dropped the sword and renounced his want to become a samurai. Michikatsu, still in awe of all this, asked Yoriichi how he did it. And it was at this point that we realized that Yoriichi is describing the earliest form of breathing techniques. You see, Yoriichi drew in his breath and used it to concentrate himself and increase his speed and agility. And while this was technically not sun breathing, it was the precursor to all breathing techniques. But this is what's truly interesting about Yoriichi as a person. Through and through, he was a pacifist. He never wanted to fight people. He was an incredibly caring human being who worked in silence. That is to say, he tried to help people around him without ever seeking the gratitude of others. And his creation of sun breathing and his subsequent joining of the Demon Slayer Corps was never done out of hate. It was simply done to alleviate the pain that demon cause humans. And the fact that it turned out like this is kind of impressive considering the fact that his childhood was anything but fun. In fact, after Yoriichi picked up the sword and then immediately dropped it, their mother soon passed of an illness. However, when their mother died, Yoriichi went to Michikatsu's room to tell him the news and also bid him farewell. You see, Akeno was basically the only thing keeping Yoriichi alive. Remember, his father wanted to kill him, but that wasn't why Yoriichi was leaving. You see, Yoriichi had realized that by showing off that his swordsmanship was so much better than Michikatsu's, that Michikatsu was actually going to be the one sent to the monks. But Yoriichi didn't tell Michikatsu this. He just gave him the flute that Michikatsu gave to him back and left, telling him that he would keep Michikatsu in his heart wherever he went. And it wasn't until Michikatsu found his mother's diary and realized that his mother knew that Yoriichi knew what was wrong with her body. You see, Akeno's illness made the left side of her body weak, and Yoriichi was able to see that the left side of her body was weak because he could see her muscle sinew and her bones and her organs. Therefore, Yoriichi was always holding on to her left side in order to support her. It was also in this diary that Michikatsu found out that there was no way that their father was gonna let Michikatsu become the heir when Yoriichi was the better swordsman. And upon reading these journal entries, Michikatsu grew a uniquely large hate for Yoriichi. You see, Yoriichi was much like the breathing technique he would later create, the sun, an incredibly powerful force that provides for everybody around them and makes their lives better and never asks for gratitude, while Michikatsu also represented the breathing technique he would later represent, the moon, a powerful force steeped in darkness that lives in the shadow of the sun. You see, Yoriichi was benign to a fault. He wanted what was best for Michikatsu, but never asked Michikatsu's opinion on what was best for him. However, after bidding farewell to Michikatsu, Yoriichi ran away from the temple and never looked back. He ran for 24 hours straight with no stops because he was using his breathing technique. Yoriichi, after running for 24 straight hours, bumped into a girl in the mountains named Yuta. And unfortunately for Yuta, her entire family had died. Therefore, Yoriichi decided to live with her. And after 10 years of living together, when Yoriichi and Yuta were about 19 or 20, they got married. And quickly soon after, Yuta became pregnant. But because Yuta was pregnant, Yoriichi had to find a midwife. And as he bid farewell to Yuta on his way to find a midwife, he said he would be back before sunset. However, while he was out looking for a midwife, he found an old man who was struggling and decided to help him. By the time that Yoriichi was done helping said old man, it was too late to find a midwife and the sun had already set, so Yoriichi had to return home. However, when he returned home, he found Yuta and his unborn child had been murdered by a demon. And this tragedy struck Yoriichi so completely that he held their corpses for 10 days straight. He didn't fly into a rage, he didn't go looking for the demon, he was just shook. And this is because for the last 10 years, Yoriichi had been living a life of relative banality, a day in, day out type of life in the mountains. A lot like, oh, I don't know, Tanjiro. And much like with Tanjiro, a passing demon slayer actually helped out Yoriichi. However, this passing demon slayer didn't end up killing the demon that killed Yoriichi's family. He just convinced Yoriichi to bury his family. And after burying his family, Yoriichi decided to re-pick up his blade and join the Demon Slayer Corps. But this is a big shakeup for Yoriichi because remember, he is a pacifist and he doesn't like the notion of hitting people. However, Yoriichi has a long track record of putting his own wants and needs behind the wants and needs of those he loves. And when Yoriichi lost Yuta, the people that he loved expanded to everybody who has ever had to deal with the plight of demons. And when Yoriichi joined the Demon Slayer Corps, he was quickly very good at it. His Demon Slayer mark and his constant access to transparent worlds made him about the best to ever do it. And slowly but surely, Yoriichi climbed his way up the ranks. However, killing demons wasn't the only good thing about joining the Demon Slayer Corps, considering the fact that the Demon Slayer Corps also brought Yoriichi back to his brother, Michikatsu. You see, Michikatsu had become a samurai, just like his father had wanted. However, the encampment of samurai that Michikatsu had been posted with got attacked by a demon, and they all died, except for Michikatsu, who was the last samurai left alive. And as the demon came down to kill Michikatsu, Yoriichi killed it effortlessly. And upon killing the demon, he apologized to Michikatsu for not getting there earlier to save his comrades. And once again, Yoriichi had saved Michikatsu without Michikatsu asking. Well, obviously, this is the correct thing to do. To Michikatsu, this was a slight, a mark against his honor, a sign that he could never defend himself without the help of his little brother. Well, they were twins, but Yoriichi was seen as the little brother because he was cursed for so long. However, even though Michikatsu sees this as a massive slight against his honor, he does join Yoriichi in the Demon Slayer Corps. And this is when Yoriichi decides to teach the Demon Slayer Corps sun breathing. Sun breathing is almost impossible to do. Yoriichi is just incredibly naturally talented and therefore was able to make the perfect breathing technique that perfectly blends offense and defense. See, some people could slightly do the movements of sun breathing, but nobody could perfectly match his form. Yoriichi, seeing that people were grasping the base of breathing techniques, decided that he could just modify sun breathing to fit each individual's certain style. And thus, the 5 major breathing techniques were created, those being water, wind, flame, stone, and lightning. You see, within each of these breathing techniques, there is glimpses of sun breathing, because certain people could do 1 or 2 techniques from sun breathing, but not all 13. Therefore, Yoriichi would pick some of the techniques from sun breathing and create an entire new breathing form built around those techniques and make that its own breathing form. Therefore, that is to say, within sun breathing, you can see every other breathing technique, which is why sun breathing is considered the perfect blend of offense and defense. However, Yoriichi also couldn't teach Michikatsu sun breathing, but Michikatsu also didn't learn any of the 5 basic breathing techniques. Michikatsu actually created his own breathing technique, moon breathing. And you see, this was different because Yoriichi not only created sun breathing, but all of the other derivatives. But Yoriichi didn't create moon breathing. That was Michikatsu. And I don't know if this was on purpose or not by Michikatsu, but sun breathing has 13 techniques and moon breathing has 16. So maybe it was like a thinly veiled attempt at outdoing his brother. And after spending many years in the Demon Slayer Corps, Yoriichi finally encounters his true enemy, Muzan. And Muzan was being accompanied by Tamiyo. And upon meeting Muzan, Yoriichi felt fear for the first time. You see, because Muzan had stated to Yoriichi that he'd grown weary of demon slayers who used breathing techniques. Muzan had overpowered every single one that ever came against him. And it was at that point that Muzan stretched his arm for long, sweeping bladed attacks at Yoriichi, all of which he dodged, but he realized if he didn't dodge, they would kill him. And in that moment, Yoriichi felt fear. However, Yoriichi didn't feel fear for long because he immediately tapped into Transparent World. And upon tapping into Transparent World, he saw that Muzan had 13 vital organs, 7 hearts, and 5 brains. Fortunately for Yoriichi, that's just as many techniques that are in sun breathing. So in that moment, Yoriichi combined all of his techniques into one move, essentially creating the Hinokami Kagura. And by combining every single one of sun breathing's techniques into one move that he can constantly do over and over and over again, he increased the efficiency at which they can be performed, and therefore they can be done for longer. However, this didn't really matter though, because Yoriichi only had to use his technique once, and he severed all 13 of Muzan's vital organs. 12, I'm sorry. And as Muzan sat there, unable to regenerate and struggling to keep his head attached to his shoulders, Yoriichi asked him what he believed the value of life was. Muzan didn't respond to Yoriichi, and he looked to Tamiyo to help him, but Tamiyo was looking down at him with hope in her eyes. And as Yoriichi closed the distance to finish off Muzan once and for all, he burst into 1,800 pieces. Yoriichi, having never seen somebody burst into a bunch of little meat cubes, was caught off guard. But even being caught off guard, he was able to destroy 1,500 of the 1,800 pieces. You know how insane that is? In a fraction of a second, Yoriichi was able to strike 1,500 meat cubes. And that was being caught off guard. If he had expected it, he would have easily destroyed every single one. But because those 300 fragments escaped, Muzan was able to escape the fight and regenerate. You know what never regenerated though? Muzan's mental health. He lived in fear of Yoriichi for the rest of his days. However, since Muzan had fled the scene, the only person left was Tamiyo, and she stood there devastated that Muzan had figured out how to avoid death by decapitation. Honestly, she was more upset than Yoriichi. And this moment right here is actually an incredible look into Yoriichi's personality, because Yoriichi approaches her and doesn't immediately attack. And it's at this point that Tamiyo tells Yoriichi everything that he needs to know about Muzan, where to find him, his weaknesses, and how she wants to be the person who kills him. And because she helped Yoriichi, he lets her go. However, even if Tamiyo hadn't helped Yoriichi, I believe that he would have let her go, as long as she expressed that she hated Muzan. You see, because Yoriichi didn't join the Demon Slayer Corps because he hated demons. Yoriichi joined the Demon Slayer Corps to protect people. He wanted Muzan and all demons that hurt people dead, not just all demons. This is evidenced by the fact that he was a pacifist, and he simply wanted those who were going to cause discomfort or pain to those around him gone. And once Tamiya was gone, Yoriichi returned to the Demon Slayer Corps. However, upon returning, he heard multiple reports that his brother Michikatsu had betrayed the organization. Michikatsu, being fed up with how his brother always took pity on him and wanting to be as strong as his brother, became a demon and assassinated the Oyakata. For those of you who don't remember what the Oyakata is, it's the guy who was blind with all the scars on his forehead. He's like the leader of the Demon Slayer Corps. However, unfortunately for Yoriichi, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. You see, Yoriichi had just let Muzan escape and also had let Tamiyo escape. And even though no Demon Slayer would have ever been able to even come close to the feat that he just pulled off, he was shamed for this. On top of all of that, he took responsibility for everything that Michikatsu did. Once again, being benign to a fault. Do all the Demon Slayers realize that Michikatsu abandoning the Demon Slayers and becoming a demon isn't Yoriichi's fault, or the fact that Yoriichi stands their best chance to kill Muzan? No. They demand he kills himself as penance. However, the new Oyakata, who replaces the one that Michikatsu just assassinated, decides he shouldn't have to kill himself. We'll just banish him. Once again, why would you get rid of your star player? I don't know, but you gotta appease the masses. But upon being banished, Yoriichi's still got a lot of life to live. He's only like 23 right now. And even though he's one of the most powerful people on the face of the earth and also well regarded for his ability to push down all of his emotions for everybody else around him, he realizes he's got to get some stuff off his chest, so he goes to visit some friends. Those friends are Sumiyoshi and Tsuyaku. You see, Sumiyoshi and Tsuyaku were married, and their last name was Kamado, like Tanjiro. Upon getting to their house, he sits down with Sumiyoshi and tells him basically his entire life story, from when he was a boy to his current banishment. And he tells Sumiyoshi how full of regret he is for letting Muzan get away, because he knows Muzan will cause thousands of deaths down the line. And upon realizing the scale of letting Muzan get away, he grows incredibly sad. And since Yoriichi is an old friend, all of the Kamados take it upon themselves to cheer him up. And after he spends a couple of days with the Kamados, Tsuyaku asks him to perform the techniques of sun breathing for all of them. Kamados were curious about this technique he created and wanted to see it in all of its glory. However, while he performed these techniques of sun breathing, Sumiyoshi was watching him, and Sumiyoshi burned all of these movements into his memory. A couple days later, Yoriichi headed out from the Kamado household, and Yoriichi, realizing he would most likely never see Sumiyoshi, his best friend, ever again, gave Sumiyoshi his Hanafuda earrings. And it was at this point that Sumiyoshi and Tsuyaku realized that Yoriichi would probably never be coming back. Neutron doesn't like it when I talk to things that aren't him. And it was at this point that Sumiyoshi called out to Yoriichi and told him that he was worthy of love and that he would pass down sun breathing to all of his descendants. And for the rest of Yoriichi's life, despite being banned from the Demon Slayer Corps, he hunted down demons silently. And as for the Demon Slayer Corps, while kicking out their strongest sun breather probably wasn't their best idea, because the corpse fell into a state of disarray. And slowly but surely, Muzan and Kokushibo began the hunt for all other sun breathers and killed every single one. And since every single sun breather was dead and Yoriichi wasn't there to teach anybody sun breathing, considering he was the best at teaching it, disappeared forever. That is, except within the Kamado family. You see, Sumiyoshi had learned the techniques of sun breathing and committed them to a dance, the 13th technique, the Hinokami Kagura. Now, this Hinokami Kagura is based off a lot of things from Japanese Shinto lore. In Shinto lore, one day, Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun, retreated into a cave, which cast the entire world into a darkness. In order to draw Amaterasu out of the cave, Ame no Uzume, the goddess of revelry and dance, danced outside of the cave in order to lure her out. And eventually Amaterasu came out and the world was bright once again. And from these events, the Kagura was born. The Kagura being a dance to honor the kami, the god, and your ancestors. Because in Shinto lore, gods and ancestors are basically the same thing. Back to Yoriichi. Like I said, Yoriichi spent the rest of his life independently hunting demons, trying for the entirety of what was a very long life to rectify the mistake of letting Muzan get away. You see, Yoriichi was born with the Demon Slayer mark, and those who are cursed with the Demon Slayer mark are only allowed to live to the age of 25. I say cursed because even though the Demon Slayer mark does give you a massive amount of power, it's a bit like being a Titan shifter. It ends your life significantly earlier than it should have. However, Yoriichi, being hilariously built different, lived to the prime age of the mid-80s. And I genuinely believe that obviously Yoriichi was absolutely built different, but also the will to rectify the mistake and minimize how many people that mistake was going to kill kept him alive for much longer than he was supposed to be. In fact, Yoriichi went blind, and that didn't even stop him from hunting down demons. Yoriichi's commitment to the betterment of human cause kept him fighting long past when he should have been. And in his mid-80s, while blind, he finally confronted his brother, Michikatsu, who was now known as Kokyoshibu. You see, this was the first time Yoriichi had seen Kokyoshibu, and he was horrified at what he was, well, I guess, not looking at. But he was so horrified that he began to cry. But Michikatsu was simply disgusted with Yoriichi and the fact that he had lived much beyond where he should have with his Demon Slayer mark. However, Michikatsu was not in the right to be disgusted or even pity his elderly brother, because before Michikatsu could even pull his blade, Yoriichi had decapitated him. And as Michikatsu stood there awaiting for his brother to finish his life as a demon, the second attack never came. And that is because after this final strike, Yoriichi died of old age. And as Michikatsu or Kokyoshibu rose from this attack after regenerating, he struck his brother's corpse out of anger, as Yoriichi had died undefeated in combat. But as he struck his brother's body, he realized his brother still carried the flute that Michikatsu gave him all those years ago. You see, because when Yoriichi had decided to give the flute back to Michikatsu upon Akeno, their mother's passing, they decided to split the flute so that they would each carry a half of it, and Yoriichi still had his half. Unable to sever his connection with his brother, regardless of his anger, Kokyoshibu took the split flute half and carried it with him. You see, Yoriichi is meant to represent Amaterasu. He's the physical representation of the sun in its undaunting power and its unrelenting commitment to shining light upon the world. There is no power in this universe greater than that of the sun. However, the sun itself can be cast into darkness, but only by itself. However, when the sun is cast into darkness, it can be pulled out of that darkness through revelry in love. Much like how Ami no Uzume was able to lure Amaterasu out of the cave, the Hino Kamikagura being passed down through the Kamado family allowed Yoriichi to live on and continue to shine light upon the world. And as Kokyoshibu stood there recovering from the decapitation his brother left to him as a final parting gift, he once again realized he was living in the sun's shadow. And even with Yoriichi passing in that moment through the Kamado family, his influence is still felt to this day. And that is everything you need to know about Yoriichi Tsujikuni. What do you guys think? He's one of my favorite characters in the entirety of Demon Slayer. Do you guys like him more now that you've heard all about him? Do you like him less for some odd reason? Tell me in the comments below. And while you're down there, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Listen, do I know more about Shinto mythology than I ever thought I would because most of anime is a reference to it? Absolutely. Do I mind? No.